A warm welcome back to the channel, your premier destination for fresh perspectives and hidden narratives surrounding Catherine, the Princess of Wales, and the British royal lineage. We begin today with an urgent, groundbreaking development. Prince Harry has faced a profound public humiliation, as King Charles III flatly dismisses his final entreaty, turning his full focus toward William and Catherine. No ancient, weathered documents sealed this fate. No grand heralds proclaimed the decision from a palace terrace. Neither action marked the definitive conclusion. During the spring of 2026, on American soil, the fatal blow to the royal existence of Prince Harry landed not with an explosive roar, but through an intentional, chilling silence. That precise moment became the absolute final nail in his princely coffin. Leading his diplomatic entourage directly into the core of American political power, King Charles III encountered desperate pleas from his self-exiled younger son for a private audience and answered them with an impenetrable barrier of frost. This was far more than a simple conflict of itineraries, it represented the brutal concluding chapter of a bitter constitutional struggle, a highly visible stripping of a prince's social relevance. It was the House of Windsor willingly severing an extremity to preserve the collective entity. Only now can the intricate, calculated anatomy of that institutional masterstroke be fully laid bare. The political theater that unfolded in Washington, D.C. during the month of April was nothing short of extraordinary. A masterfully planned choreography of global influence played out, sending ripples across the international community. President Donald Trump engaged in intense, high-stakes diplomacy with King Charles III during the monarch's inaugural major state visit to America since ascending the throne. This grand showcase aimed to reaffirm the enduring alliance that has united both superpowers across past generations. Concurrently, the international press corps remained fixated on an entirely separate conflict. A compelling storyline of potential family healing dominated the airwaves, a wandering son residing in his coastal California sanctuary, just a brief flight away, desperately anticipating a single gesture of paternal peace. For months, this very narrative had expanded under intense global speculation regarding a potential Montecito reconciliation. The media envisioned a tearful family gathering that might initiate the mending of the most severe royal fracture seen in 100 years. This deep laceration had continued to deteriorate under the glare of public scrutiny, fueled by revealing televised confessions, highly critical autobiographies, and a relentless exchange of hostilities across the Atlantic Ocean. Yet, instead of receiving a token of peace, Harry collided directly with an unyielding constitutional stronghold. Senior diplomatic insiders and verified dispatches from ITV News sketched a deeply unsettling reality. The daily itinerary of the monarch had been mapped out with surgical accuracy, leaving no room for any potential overlap. Zero accidental gaps existed, no unintended moments or spontaneous opportunities for a surprise reunion were left to chance. The public relations team representing the Sussexes found it impossible to engineer a single vulnerability within that schedule. What occurred was a deliberate, calculated act of state policy, a choice that far outweighed the personal heartbreak shared between a father and his child. To truly grasp the magnitude of this rejection, one must possess at least a fundamental understanding of modern constitutional monarchy. The ruling sovereign ceases to act as an individual parent, a casual traveler, or a private entity the moment they cross international borders. The monarch operates as the living, breathing manifestation of the British state itself. Within this framework, every smile serves as a diplomatic dispatch, and every single handshake functions as a binding contract. The king mirrors the official policies and global standing of his homeland on the world stage. Consequently, it would have amounted to catastrophic institutional self-destruction had King Charles granted an audience to Prince Harry, a man who had willfully abandoned his official obligations, commercialized his grievances against the monarchy, and openly attacked the core integrity of the very institution his father now leads. Such a meeting would have inadvertently granted Harry a status akin to a rogue ambassador. It would have validated his self-selected exile and signaled to the political elite of America that he still retained leverage over the royal household. To welcome him privately would imply his intense public criticisms carried enough weight to demand an audience with the head of state, instantly fracturing the exact image of supreme authority that Charles intended to project throughout Washington. Following intense internal deliberation, Charles made the agonizing choice to elevate the crown above his own blood. Observers intimate with the situation viewed this path as cold, yet utterly indispensable. By etching an unmistakable, definitive boundary in the sand, the king broadcast a crystal-clear message to global power brokers: Prince Harry no longer speaks for the United Kingdom. Operating purely as a private citizen, the prince has become a mere phantom within the machinery of international diplomacy. Retaining such close proximity to the line of succession has transformed into a distinct liability rather than an asset. As official state dialogues with the American president pressed forward, a potent, undeniable truth was established: the institutional machinery of the monarchy marches onward, completely indifferent to the presence or absence of the Sussexes. The verdict was reached, and it stood absolute. A new sentinel had taken up his post at the gate. While King Charles III fortified his geopolitical standing across the United States, the foundations for a restructured domestic apparatus were being cemented back in Great Britain. The void created by the sudden departure of Harry and Meghan exposed a critical vulnerability within the royal hierarchy: a severe shortage of active working representatives. For several years, the Sussexes appeared to operate under the arrogant assumption that their absence would create an unsustainable vacuum. They seemingly gambled that the sheer weight of institutional duties, paired with an endless schedule of charitable patronages, state receptions, and ceremonial appearances, would inevitably force the king's hand, compelling him to sue for peace on their terms. This calculation proved to be a monumental error. It completely misjudged both the unyielding determination of the royal institution and the quiet, steady maturation of its most overlooked figures, Prince Edward and his wife Sophie, the newly minted Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh. Their rapid elevation represented far more than a routine promotion; it was a profound tactical realignment. This state-level countermeasure received explicit authorization from King Charles and, most crucially, from Prince William, the direct heir to the throne. Harry and Meghan had attempted to pioneer a compromised, fragmented model of royalty, one that hungered for the prestigious privileges of the crown while discarding its heavy obligations, prioritizing personal commercial branding and independent wealth. The Edinburghs stood as the absolute antithesis of that philosophy. They brought to the table a deep-seated belief in quiet, uncomplaining dedication and all-in devotion that echoed an era long past. Their ascent marked an intentional pivot back to the stoic, service-driven values that defined the historic eras of the late Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip. It is a philosophy that draws its quiet power from steady, understated reliability rather than the blinding, fleeting glare of modern celebrity culture. For Prince William, this adjustment was not merely a temporary patch, but a cornerstone of his forward-looking blueprint for the family business. Having witnessed firsthand the immense chaos and structural wreckage left in the wake of the Sussex saga, William formed a clear resolution. He aimed to forge a streamlined monarchy entirely scrubbed of the intense soap opera drama that plagued his father's early adulthood and his grandmother's historic reign, eras frequently disrupted by volatile personalities and internal friction. By actively championing the elevation of the Edinburghs, William delivered his definitive manifesto. Simultaneously, he solidified his domestic support system, signaling beyond any doubt that his future administration has absolutely no requirement for a secondary royal court based in California. Over a long trajectory, Prince Edward had quietly evolved into one of the most dependable elder statesmen within the family firm, despite navigating some public skepticism during his youth. In the early months of 2026, Edward embarked on a high-profile diplomatic tour of Canada, a Commonwealth nation sharing deep ancestral ties with the king. This specific deployment served as a powerful testament to his newly secured position at the center of royal operations. Meanwhile, the British press had spent months celebrating Duchess Sophie as the monarchy's ultimate secret weapon, as she executed an exhausting, demanding itinerary of global tours. She stepped effortlessly into the humanitarian space left vacant by Meghan, yet she did so with a single, massive divergence. Sophie achieved this without relying on carefully calculated public relations campaigns, orchestrated media leaks, or high-maintenance theatrics. Instead of centering the narrative on personal celebrity, her efforts remained fiercely dedicated to the underlying causes, effectively reinforcing the constitutional framework. The most devastating blow to the remaining status of Prince Harry did not originate within the court of public opinion. Instead, his most profound defeat materialized within the quiet, timber-lined chambers of the British Parliament. This arrived via a formal, legally binding restructuring of the Councillors of State. This centuries-old constitutional mechanism permits a highly restricted group of senior royals to wield official authority on behalf of the reigning monarch should he face incapacitation or travel abroad. In its simplest terms, it represents holding the literal keys to the kingdom, a role of immense constitutional trust and latent executive power. By virtue of his royal birth and his position as sixth in line to the crown, Harry would normally have retained this crucial legal designation. However, the uncompromising stance of the king was thoroughly codified by rapid legislative adjustments. Driven by a cold, purely institutional strategy, Parliament moved swiftly to permanently and explicitly assign these constitutional roles to the ever-dependable Princess Anne and the newly promoted Prince Edward. What took place was essentially a quiet, legal palace coup. The undeniable core of the legislative argument rested on a simple premise: a non-working member of the family residing permanently outside the boundaries of the United Kingdom should never hold the legal authority to govern the realm, nor should they ever be granted the opportunity to exercise such power. This targeted piece of legislation effectively stripped Harry of his very last vestige of official state authority, demoting him from a potential regent-in-waiting into a complete constitutional outsider. This legislative purge marked the absolute climax of a systematic institutional erasure. The process had begun in earnest back in 2023 with the formal eviction notice demanding the return of the keys to Frogmore Cottage, their final sovereign foothold within Great Britain. With every passing phase, the royal apparatus methodically scrubbed his image from the official landscape. As far as the law and the state were concerned, Harry had suddenly been transformed into an absolute bystander to the very institution he was born to reinforce. On the opposite side of the globe, far removed from the defensive political architecture of Buckingham Palace, a parallel collapse was unfolding with equal velocity. This professional implosion occurred under the unforgiving glare of the California sun. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex, once heralded as the pioneers of a revolutionary model of global cultural influence, witnessed the absolute demolition of their commercial ambitions. As the spring of 2026 dawned, a harsh shift in fortunes became undeniable. They evolved rapidly from visionary global changemakers into isolated figures within the entertainment industry. Major trade publications began branding them as reputational refugees. The idealized American dream they had bought into and had been aggressively marketing to the world was rapidly disintegrating into a grim reality of cancelled agreements, professional alienation, and a catastrophic collapse of personal credibility. The most glaring indicator of this professional decay was the sudden retreat of their once impenetrable Hollywood inner circle. Across the United States, the elite power brokers who had initially masterminded their American launch executed a swift, calculated exit, leaving the Sussex brand exposed and devoid of a clear path forward. Perhaps the most crippling blow emerged from the profound silence echoing from the inner circle of Oprah Winfrey, their original media champion. The explosive 2021 interview, which had provided them with a massive worldwide megaphone to air their domestic grievances, is now viewed by Winfrey's inner sanctum as a deeply toxic asset, a significant blemish on the cultural legacy she has spent decades meticulously constructing. High-level media insiders in Los Angeles reported that Winfrey, a self-made billionaire whose entire media empire relies on a foundation of trust and perceived authenticity, took decisive measures to shield her own enterprises. Internal brand audits had thoroughly picked apart key assertions made during that original broadcast, identifying severe discrepancies. Most damaging among these central claims was the allegation of a clandestine wedding ceremony, an assertion subsequently and aggressively dismantled by the Archbishop of Canterbury himself. Serving as the primary launchpad for demonstrable falsehoods was a reputational injury Oprah refused to tolerate over the long term. Sources familiar with the entertainment landscape indicate that the woman who once served as their most influential American patron has now placed the couple on a strict non-association list. Within the cutthroat corridors of Hollywood power, this variety of social exile functions as a definitive professional death sentence. Their chaotic and highly strained departure from the elite Hollywood talent agency William Morris Endeavor, widely known as WME, only intensified their profound isolation. The corporate hierarchy at the agency had reportedly endured a phase of severe internal friction regarding their representation. This conflict culminated when the legendary, fiercely ruthless chief executive officer of WME, Ari Emanuel, personally severed all professional ties with Meghan Markle. Insiders within the agency revealed that the couple's relentless demands for around-the-clock crisis management, extending even through major holiday periods, had become completely unsustainable. Reports surfaced in Los Angeles suggesting that the couple displayed the exact variety of high-handed, demanding behavior that they had spent years denying back in London. Emmanuel, a cold-eyed realist who deals exclusively in highly profitable assets, concluded that the Sussex brand no longer justified the internal corporate chaos or the compounding damage to his firm's prestige. With the loss of the immense institutional leverage and negotiating power provided by a global powerhouse like WME, the Duke and Duchess were left to navigate the dangerous currents of the entertainment industry entirely unaided. The immediate fallout was the total, grinding halt of their highly publicized digital content development. Their multi-million-dollar production contracts with Netflix, originally envisioned as the streaming giant's premier vehicle for global cultural commentary, instead degenerated into a classic state of development hell. Prominent projects were quietly shelved without explanation, while entertainment analysts pointed to an insurmountable deficit in audience trust. While their initial corporate manifestos were grand, the actual creative output of the partnership consistently underdelivered. Once the raw shock value of their anti-royal complaints evaporated, very little authentic, compelling substance remained to hold the attention of a global viewership. The Duke and Duchess were forced to confront a brutal truth. Within the unforgiving meritocracy of modern Hollywood, a historic title signifies absolutely nothing if the final product fails to perform. While their commercial foundations crumbled, a singular event occurred that exposed the deep, almost systematic double standards residing at the very center of the Sussex operation. Against the backdrop of their dissolving professional relationships, the Kardashian controversy of late 2025 ignited a public relations firestorm that raged for months. This incident solidified a belief within both the royal palace and the wider public that the couple's instinct for strategy was not merely flawed, but fundamentally broken. The tipping point arrived with the revelation that Harry and Meghan had chosen to attend a remarkably opulent birthday celebration for Kris Jenner in Calabasas. This was no ordinary evening of reality television-fueled glitz, it represented a direct, deeply tone-deaf contradiction in terms of values. The timing of their attendance could not have been more disastrous. It coincided precisely with the United Kingdom's solemn observance of Remembrance Sunday. Remembrance Sunday stands as an untouchable, deeply sacred occasion for the British public and the military institutions in which Harry had once proudly served. The imagery of the King alongside the Prince of Wales placing memorial wreaths at the cenotaph in London serves as the ultimate national symbol of duty, selflessness, and quiet sacrifice. Yet, while his homeland paused in mournful reflection, the Duke of Sussex was pictured engaging in the superficial excess of America's most prominent reality television dynasty thousands of miles away. The visual contrast was jarring, instantly igniting a massive public relations backlash. In a desperate bid to contain the fallout, the Sussex publicity machine initiated a high-stakes damage control campaign. It was widely reported that Harry and Meghan issued an urgent demand to Kim Kardashian and Kris Jenner, pleading for the immediate deletion of any images featuring them from their massive social media accounts. Their official explanation, quietly distributed to friendly media outlets, claimed they wished to show profound respect for the monarch and the nation's fallen soldiers by avoiding any public association with frivolous celebrations during a period of national mourning. The reaction that echoed back from London was one of pure, unadulterated disdain. Behind closed doors, officials dismissed their explanation as the most transparent form of false piety. Insiders within the palace communications team, who had maintained a disciplined public silence for years, remarked that the sheer hypocrisy of the couple was staggering. A husband and wife who had spent years systematically attempting to dismantle the prestige of the monarchy through lucrative tell-all interviews and memoirs were now attempting to use the institution's most revered traditions as a shield to escape a self-inflicted public relations disaster. Royal commentators and cultural analysts quickly dismantled this fragile defense. Their counter-argument was unyielding. Had the couple truly harbored any authentic respect for the solemnity of that national occasion, the only appropriate response would have been to decline the party invitation from the outset. This frantic cleanup campaign was viewed not as a gesture of loyalty to the crown, but as a cynical, desperate attempt to avoid being categorized as detached elites celebrating while their former homeland paid tribute to its war dead. Consequently, this incident prompted the palace to codify a brand new operational doctrine known as absolute non-engagement. Moving forward, the royal household would completely withdraw from any public war of words. They would simply step back and allow the independent actions of the Sussexes to speak for themselves, entirely confident that the global public could no longer look past the glaring contradictions of their behavior. The cascading effects of their professional stagnation and fractured reputations eventually penetrated the most guarded corners of their domestic life. This introduced a deeply ironic twist to the one issue Prince Harry had spent his adult life defending with near religious fervor: the absolute right to personal privacy. The couple found themselves forced to compromise the very thing they had sworn to shield at all costs: the private lives and public identities of their young children, Archie and Lilibet. The severe financial drain resulting from cancelled commercial agreements left a massive monetary deficit that required immediate satisfaction. For years, the Duke of Sussex had waged a relentless legal crusade against the paparazzi, attacking what he characterized as a predatory media culture that violated basic human rights by exposing young children to the public gaze. However, by the time April of 2026 arrived, the unrelenting financial realities of maintaining a $14 million estate, alongside an independent security detail running into multiple millions annually, transformed those high-minded principles into an unaffordable luxury. King Charles had remained completely unyielding in his refusal to subsidize their private security costs. Consequently, Meghan rapidly shifted into the digital lifestyle space, with her children effectively being utilized for lucrative commercial brand endorsements to bankroll a lifestyle that the British monarchy refused to underwrite. This shift became necessary as traditional avenues of revenue completely dried up. Deep public skepticism erupted following the strategic release of archived family home movies, including clips of a ski trip and footage from a past Easter celebration. While these recordings were carefully packaged to project a grounded, highly relatable family dynamic, digital forensics experts and media analysts concluded they presented a deeply synthetic veneer. Media analysts identified bizarre anomalies within the video frames. Observers noted that the physical features of the children appeared to shift inconsistently between scenes, and the relative size differences between the siblings seemed structurally impossible given the actual timeline of their growth. A prominent theory emerged suggesting the family had become so detached from normal public relations that they were splicing together video segments from entirely different calendar years simply to maintain a digital presence, hoping to attract corporate sponsors. This manipulation ignited profound anger within the core of the royal family. The tactical shift was viewed as a tragic manifestation of the broader Sussex pattern, a perspective held with particular intensity by traditionalists like Princess Anne and the Duchess of Edinburgh. While the young Sussex children are perceived as isolated figures wandering a massive, cold estate that critics have analogized to a luxurious penitentiary, the Edinburghs continue to execute their state duties with a natural, unforced grace requiring zero digital enhancement. This profound divergence created deep concern across political and social commentaries. The latest media outputs from the Sussex household are widely criticized as a blatant monetization of parenthood. The public contribution of the Edinburghs remains rooted in accountability rather than a quest for fame. Even former loyalists of the Duke have expressed deep disillusionment over the bitter irony that a man who once vocally detested media intrusion has become the individual directly responsible for the digital exposure of his own children. When examining the definitive victory of the British Crown, all alternative narratives fade away. By the time the spring of 2026 arrived in Great Britain, the institutional correction reached its clinical conclusion. The monarchy had not merely weathered the ideological rebellion originating from Sussex, it emerged from the crucible significantly more resilient, strategically decentralized, and possessed of a structural transparency that very few analysts could have anticipated. This outcome represented an extraordinary institutional achievement. One of the defining hallmarks of this final phase was the intentional, total silence maintained by Buckingham Palace. To state it plainly, the royal household developed a complete refusal to engage with any discussions regarding a future role for Harry and Meghan within the organization. While the palace boundary had not always been so impenetrable, this policy of silence solidified into a permanent constitutional wall. The king's overarching methodology, colloquially dubbed ignore and replace, matured from a temporary public relations strategy into a foundational philosophy of governance. This constant visual narrative of a forward-looking monarchy completely unconcerned with past historical grievances is reinforced daily by the frequent public appearances of the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh alongside the Prince and Princess of Wales. Because of this seamless transition, any hypothetical return for Harry has been rendered not only logistically impossible, but entirely unnecessary. A vast majority of the British public has become thoroughly aligned with the specific brand of quiet loyalty modeled by the current working royals. Every single vacancy within the firm has been completely filled. Behind the scenes, palace officials have treated Meghan's recent public assertions with a sense of clinical indifference. Her claims of self-editing her upcoming projects to ostensibly protect the monarchy have been met with total skepticism. This creative restructuring is viewed by palace insiders as a desperate attempt to weaponize the prestige of the crown to mask a total lack of authentic, original content. The strategy is so transparent that observers find it almost tragic in its lack of authenticity. The palace operates with the clear understanding that the global audience can now easily recognize the pattern. The Sussexes only invoke the prestige of royal standards when their corporate agreements are actively being terminated. The king's absolute refusal to grant Harry an audience during his American tour served as the definitive decree to the global elite. It signaled that the financial and reputational reserves of the British monarchy are permanently closed to the Sussexes. They have successfully engineered a reality where they inhabit a professional no-man's land, far too radioactive for the heritage brands of Hollywood, yet having permanently severed their foundational ties to the royal lineage. They took a massive gamble, and the ultimate consequence was the total destruction of their standing within the system. A brand new era has officially commenced, defined by the unwavering commitment of William, Catherine, Edward, and Sophie. What the Sussex family is experiencing is no longer a temporary estrangement. It has solidified into a permanent state of exile. The final chapter has closed for Harry and Meghan. The book is officially finished, and the durable, majestic machinery of the British monarchy moves forward, leaving them to live out their days within the quiet confines of Montecito. Thank you for your time today. We welcome your perspectives in the commentary space below, and we bid you farewell for now.